resident member of the Bills Mafia, NFL Network analyst, Michael Robinson, making his weekly appearance. Mike Rob, it's good to have you. Before we jump into the Bills here, let's share your shock and utter disbelief in the announcement by the Indianapolis Colts about who their interim head coach is.
Yeah, guys, first of all, a pleasure to be on, as always. Understand, yeah, we took a L this past week, but before we get into that, Jeff Saturday is the new Indianapolis Colts head coach. Like, I understand Frank Reich got fired. I understood that would have happened. I actually thought that would have happened last year after they lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Jeff Saturday, I thought it was a spoof, guys. I thought this was a joke. I thought it was going to be Saturday Night Live on every sports station that there is known to man. And I thought that I was going to be, it was a joke, but it's obviously for real. To me, this is a clear sign that they're not trying to win no more damn games this year. I know that much.
Yeah, right. I mean, that seems. I mean, he's part of the Ring of Honor. He brings some cachet that way for season ticket holders. It's a nice feel good story, but dude, a head coach of an NFL team is a complicated job, man. You got a million moving parts. He's been working for ESPN. He hasn't been in the building. I don't even know if he knows the guys on the staff.
I'm sure he knows the guys on the staff. I'm sure he has a good relationship. I'm sure, the look of everything is going to be right. But I'm just saying, like, what about the ex-head coaches like Gus Bradley on the coaching staff? What about guys like Reggie Wayne on the coaching staff? Future Hall of Fame guys like that. It's like you just overlook those guys. And we got to be honest. Like, Andrew Luck set this organization back 20 years.
Yeah,
20 years.
Good point.
Right. Well.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get it. I will mention this because I mentioned it earlier. Chris Ballard did have an opportunity to draft a quarterback and instead decided to draft Quentin Nelson. And then after he got his bag, his play has dropped off precipitously. So could have got a quarterback then, even if you had Rivers. So, just saying.
Yep.
Just leaving that. I'll leave that one there as we dive into the Bills here, though, Michael. So things looked off from the beginning, and I want to dive into the turnover table with you because this is not the first time that turnovers have surfaced as an issue, Mike, because the Bills are now tied for second most in the AFC and third most turnovers in the league with 15 in 8 games.
Yeah. That's a problem. And look, guys, I think we talked about this for the last few weeks. When you know what your identity is, and whether you like it or not, Bills Mafia, the identity of this offense is throwing the football because we got one of those guys in Josh Allen. Okay, when that's your identity, when you're throwing the football, there's a lot more chance for the ball to be turned over. There's a lot of factors that have to happen. That's why teams that run the football don't oftentimes turn the football over that much. And I was always saying, like, look, I'm not saying that our offense has to run for 200 yards a game, but I am saying that in spots, in situational football, in spots in games, we have to be able to turn around and hand the football off to Devin Singletary or James Cook and rely on those double teams and just push people off the ball. That's number one. Number two, we're the hunted. We are the hunted. And I hope every guy in that locker room understands that. I hope they hear this interview for real, because when you're the hunted, it's totally different. See, in 2012 with Russell Wilson's rookie year, we had made a splash. We started averaging 50 points toward the end of the season. I'm talking about my Seattle Seahawks, and got to the playoffs. We ended up losing to Matt Ryan and, the Atlanta Falcons, but we had put everybody on notice. The next year, we were the hunted. Every game felt like it was the hardest game on the planet. Teams fake punts, teams fake field goals, teams did everything. And I think our Bills Mafia and our Bills football team, those players in that locker room, they got to get used to this type of stress, okay? And at the end of the day, and Josh Allen, I think, summed it up perfectly. You can't turn the ball over like he did, and I think he understands that. So to have that many defensive guys missing, to turn the ball over like we did, which I don't anticipate that happening every week. Look, nobody said we was gonna go undefeated, so it is what it is.
Yeah, and I'll say this too: there's always that tend to overreact. We got to change all this. We got to do this. The Bills really don't have to do too much going forward except just keep on keeping on and trust the process, like is the mantra inside the building. But I do expect, and we've been talking about this too, I do expect them to evolve a little bit from this because you learn something about yourself when you see what other teams think about you. And the Jets certainly had a good game plan and they executed it to perfection against the Bills yesterday. Got a great game from a young quarterback, probably the best game of his career, probably the most important game of his career. He was 18 for 25, only threw for $150, but he didn't turn it over. And they can win like that because their defense is that good. So the Bills see the Jets playing them like that, learn something about themselves. How do you see the Bills evolve from this? Maybe not, 180 degrees, but maybe a couple of degrees right or left of where they're at right now. Where do you see them headed?
Well, first and foremost, Devin Singletary has to have more than 24 rushing yards. He has to have more than 8 attempts. And again, I'm not saying let's turn this thing into a Lamar Jackson type of offense and run the football and all. No, I'm not saying that because that's just not the identity of our offense. But again, this game was never out of reach. We were ahead most of the game. Like this game was never, where you had to abandon the run game. And yes, Josh had his runs and things like that. But it's something too when you turn the football. I mean, when you turn around and hand the football off. So I think we'll be better in situational football there. And then 73, our left tackle, Mr. Dawkins, Mr. Deion Dawkins. He had one of those days. He didn't have a great game, and I think he would look at the film and admit that he didn't have a great game. They picked on him. The Jets picked on him in pass pro, right? They left him one-on-one, and oftentimes there were times where he lost. There were times where he allowed Josh Allen to be affected. And then defensively, I come on here, I talk every week about how Matt Milano is the glue to this defense. His injury, his impact, the fact that he wasn't out there showed up this past week. So again, just getting healthy and just, again, like you said, trusting the process. I think that's all this team has to do, and I think we'll be fine.
What about diversifying the passing game, Michael? Because through 8 games, Stephon Diggs now has triple the receptions of Gabe Davis, triple the receptions of Dawson Knox, and no one, whether it's one person or a committee, has capably filled the role left behind by Cole Beasley, who was that safety valve, bailout, move the sticks option for Josh when nothing was going on downfield in terms of separation or somebody being open. Where does that go from here, and who might be able to fill that void and allow it to materialize down the stretch?
Yeah, that's a good question. I thought we would have got more out of Gabe Davis yesterday. He's more of that big guy, getting the ball downfield. The Khalil Shakir, I think, was he banged up? Did he play yesterday?
He played, but he only got 15 snaps.
Yeah, he didn't play that much. And, I got some questions about why his snap count wasn't up as well, because, again, you're right. The slot is where those hidden yards need to come from in this offense, either getting it in the passing game out of the slot or turning around and handing the football off. Like that, those are the only two ways those hidden yards are kind of going to be made up in this offense. But again, to me, at the end of the day, it's about situational football. And if our quarterback, one of the baddest men on the planet, the 2022 MVP of the National Football League, Josh Allen, if he doesn't turn the football over, I think we're having a different conversation today, guys.
Sure, and I would agree with that. And I don't want to oversimplify it and not take the loss seriously and not learn from it. But you always get the, let's fire the coaching staff kind of calls and people, the overreaction and the people who are, distraught over this loss. I do think it does tend to force you into some evolution as a coaching staff. This coaching staff, and Brownie has said it a bunch, is really good at learning from what has been done to them in a loss or even a win. So I would, and that's really what we don't know yet. What do they see about what they need to do differently to get Gabe Davis involved, to get Khalil Shakir involved, or McKenzie more involved, others more involved? Because Steph Diggs is the offense right now in the passing game. 60 receptions. Nobody else has got more than 20, 21.
Well, he's the safety blanket. I mean, honestly, you can see when Josh drops back, if he gets any type of pressure or whatever, that chemistry kicks in. Like he's looking for his guy. And at the end of the day, Stephon makes himself readily available, and he's made enough plays that Josh trusts him in those situations. And I know it was a Hail Mary. It was one of the last plays, but did you see that last play, that last throw from Josh? Oh, my goodness.
Right
that
in his
actually
chest.
hit Gabe Davis in the chest. It was 70 yards in the air. I mean, I hope Josh's elbow was fine and stuff like that, but I'm like, that was probably the best throw of the year. I mean, really.
Yeah, it was insane, and Gabe said he should have caught it, and he should have. He allowed it to hit his chest plate, and he didn't make the catch. And we can argue defensive pass interference, too, as his right arm was being held by Sauce Gardner, but that's another story for another day. You can't rely on the on the refs to win the game for you, as we've known all too often over the years. Defense, just a little bit here, Michael, because after talking to a half dozen defensive players in the locker room after the game, everyone to a man said, we just have to tackle better. And we've seen this crop up as an issue from time to time. Last year against the Colts, Jonathan Taylor runs for 5 touchdowns. The tackling was terrible. They fixed it, and we're better the next week. My question to you, though, Mike, and I know you played on the offensive side of the ball, but it's one of the fundamental building blocks of a football team, tackling. Why does it crop up sometimes, especially for a defense that is this experienced in year 6 of this system? There's nothing else that could really distract them from mastering the fundamentals, and they harp on it in practice here with this staff. Why does it fall by the wayside as a deficiency in a week like this? I'm just puzzled by it.
Well, yeah, I know, and it's easy for us because we don't have the pads on. We're not the ones running around. We're not the ones whose body is aching and all of those things, and in those real game situations. But again, when there is no Jordan Poyer, when your Micah Hyde is gone for the season, when Matt Milano is gone, when Tre'Davious White is, I mean, I'm talking about leaders. I'm not just talking about some guys that are just holding positions and some guys that are just playing average football. These are like all pros. These are like the guys at their position. And then at the end of the day, tackling is a physical encounter. And the NFL rules don't allow teams to tackle that much, especially as we used to when I first got into the National Football League. Just doesn't allow for the tackling to happen. So there has to be a conscious effort, a conscious focus on tackling. And then when you get in, and you got to do that during the week. And when you get in games, you got to have that same focus on tackling. Quite frankly, guys, I just think we had one of those days. We just had one of those days. And again, you're going to have some of those days in a championship season, right? You take away the turnovers, this turns into instead of a loss, it turns into an ugly win. And I think maybe, again, this conversation is a little bit different. But again, guys, all teams have it. They just have one of those days where, everything I'm seeing it isn't right. I'm trying to throw a whole shot in the cover 2, and all of a sudden this corner's bigger than I thought. You know what I mean? Like sometimes you just have one of these days.
When you look at going forward, the Minnesota Vikings coming into Buffalo, they're 7-1 riding high. This is a team. This is a year, particularly in the AFC, and we were talking about this. 9 teams have 5 wins, and then it drops off. The rest of them have 3 or less. So those 9 teams are kind of in the hunt right now. Bills are number 1 seed still, and the NFC is just the opposite. You've got like 5 teams that have 6 wins. Everybody else has got 4 or less. So there is a drop off in both conferences. What do you think that means going forward? I mean, it's a parity-driven league, and the Bills still at the 1 seed after losing on a weekend. Where do you think this thing shakes out, particularly in the AFC?
Well, again, in the AFC, it's one of those things that if I'm Bills Mafia, which I am, we got to continue to play good football and win that number 1 seed. To me, I think as you're seeing this thing shake out, it's going to be vital that the playoffs come through Highmark Stadium. I mean, I just think that's going to be vital. So as this season comes on, as we turn the page into the finish of the season, yes, tackling has to be a must. Running the football has to be a must. No turnovers have to be a must. The focus has to be there. And again, once you just play football and trust the process, things tend to start to go your way because I believe Brandon Beam in the front office of this team, they've built a juggernaut from a roster standpoint that's deep. So again, just trust the process and the games will come.
Michael Robinson, thanks as always for your insight this week. We'll catch up with you next week, man.
Thank you, brother. Hopefully after a win, you know how we do it.
Yeah.
All right, Mike Rob, thanks.
We're hoping
Yes,
for a
sir.
course correct for sure. That's Michael Robinson, NFL Network analyst and Bills Mafia member.